Have you ever had one of those days where everything seems to go wrong? Maybe you woke up to bad news, faced unexpected setbacks at work, or found yourself caught in a situation that felt completely out of your control. In moments like these, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, directionless, and even lost, as if you're navigating a storm without a map or a compass to guide you. We've all been there, swept up in the chaos of life, wondering how to find our footing again when the ground beneath us seems to shift without warning. But what if I told you there's an ancient tool, an invisible compass that has guided thinkers through some of history's most turbulent times, helping them remain steady, focused, and purposeful no matter what challenges arose? This invisible compass isn't a physical object or a secret technique reserved for philosophers. It's a way of thinking rooted in Stoicism that empowers anyone to find clarity and strength from within. The great Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words capture the essence of Stoic wisdom, the understanding that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. This simple but profound shift in perspective is what allows Stoic thinkers to navigate crises with a sense of purpose and direction, even when everything around them seems to be falling apart. In this video, we're going to explore the key Stoic principles that form this invisible compass. We'll uncover how ideas like focusing on what we can control, embracing our fate, and cultivating inner virtue can provide unwavering guidance when we need it most. Whether you're facing personal challenges, professional uncertainty, or just the everyday stresses of modern life, these timeless teachings offer practical tools to help you regain your footing and move forward with confidence. By the end of our journey, you'll understand how to tap into this inner compass for yourself, transforming moments of chaos into opportunities for growth, resilience, and clarity. At the very heart of this Stoic compass lies a deceptively simple yet transformative idea known as the dichotomy of control. This is the foundational principle that everything in our lives can be sorted into two distinct categories: those things we have complete control over and those things we do not. The Stoics argued that the root of most of our anxiety, frustration, and that feeling of being lost comes from a fundamental confusion between these two realms. We exhaust ourselves trying to command the weather, the opinions of others, or the flow of traffic, while simultaneously neglecting the one thing we truly reign over: our own mind, our judgments, and our actions. The ancient teacher Epictetus, who was born into slavery and faced immense adversity, opened his famous handbook with this very lesson. He said, "Some things are within our power while others are not." Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. This is the core of the invisible compass. It points unerringly toward our internal world, the only true domain of our command. Think about a modern scenario almost everyone can relate to. You're running late for an important meeting, and you get stuck in a massive traffic jam. Your immediate reaction might be frustration, anger, maybe even panic. You grip the steering wheel tighter, you curse the other drivers, you refresh the traffic app hoping the red line will magically turn green. In this moment, you are pouring all of your mental and emotional energy into something you have zero control over. The Stoic approach, guided by the dichotomy of control, would be to pause and make a quick assessment. Can I control this traffic? No. Can I control the fact that I might be late? No, that is now an external outcome. What can I control? I can control my reaction. I can choose to use this time to listen to an audiobook or practice some deep breathing. I can control calling the office to politely inform them I've been delayed. I can control ensuring I leave earlier next time. By shifting your focus entirely to that inner circle of control, you reclaim your power. The traffic jam hasn't changed, but your experience of it is transformed from a stressful crisis into a minor inconvenience. This principle applies to so much more than traffic. It's about work stress when a project goes off the rails due to a colleague's mistake. It's about personal worry over a loved one's life choices. It's about anxiety over economic downturns or world events. In each case, the practice is the same. Pause and consciously separate the elements you can influence from those you cannot. This isn't about passivity, it's about intelligent action. It directs your energy with precision, like a laser, toward what is actually productive and away from what is merely draining. So I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, what situations in your life consistently drain your energy and generate frustration because you're trying to control the uncontrollable? Is it the past which is already written, the expectations of other people, the specific outcome of a risky venture? Identifying these energy drains is the first step in recalibrating your compass toward true north, which is always found within. This profound shift in mindset from resisting what happens to embracing it brings us to the next powerful principle on our Stoic journey, amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. If the dichotomy of control is the compass that shows us where to focus our energy, then amor fati is the attitude that allows us to walk that path without hesitation or resentment. It is the conscious decision to not just accept, but to genuinely welcome every single event in our lives, the victories and the defeats, the joys and the heartbreaks, as if we had chosen them ourselves. The Stoics believed that every experience, no matter how difficult, is an indispensable thread in the tapestry of our lives, woven there for a reason. To fight against it is to fight against the fabric of reality itself, a battle that only leads to suffering, but to embrace it is to find a profound sense of peace and an unshakable resilience. This idea was so powerful that it resonated centuries later with the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who famously wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it." Nietzsche saw this radical acceptance as the ultimate expression of a life well lived. For the Stoics, this wasn't a passive resignation. It was an active, courageous engagement with life on its own terms. It's the understanding that obstacles are not roadblocks, but rather the very raw materials we need to build our character. A ship is not tested in calm waters, but in rough seas, and so too is our strength forged in the fires of adversity. We can see a powerful example of this in the life of Marcus Aurelius himself. As Emperor of Rome, he spent years leading his troops on the harsh and dangerous northern frontier, battling Germanic tribes. He faced constant threats, miserable weather, and the immense weight of responsibility for the entire empire, all while privately grappling with chronic illness and profound personal loss. Yet, in his private journal, which we know as Meditations, we find not a single line of self-pity or complaint. Instead, we find a man practicing amor fati. He wrote to himself, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." He viewed each challenge, each discomfort, and each moment of fear as another log thrown onto his inner fire, an opportunity to generate more light and warmth, more virtue and strength. He didn't just endure his fate on that battlefield, he loved it for what it could teach him. How can we apply this today? Consider a modern scenario. You work tirelessly on a project for months, only to have it cancelled by upper management. The initial reaction is often devastation, anger, and a sense of wasted effort. The conventional mindset sees this as a pure failure, a setback to be mourned. But the amor fati mindset asks a different question. What if this cancellation is a necessary part of my journey? It might free me up for an even better opportunity that was just around the corner. It might have saved me from a path that ultimately wouldn't have fulfilled me. It certainly taught me invaluable lessons about perseverance, process, and detachment from outcomes that I can now apply to my next endeavor. By loving this fate, you transform a seeming disaster into a hidden gift. This shift doesn't negate the difficulty of the experience, but it does rob it of its power to break you. So I'll leave you with this question to ponder. How might your perspective on life change if you began to see every challenge, every unexpected turn, not as an obstacle to be overcome, but as an opportunity to be embraced? Now, let's take that embrace of fate and elevate it quite literally. To gain an entirely new vantage point on our problems, the Stoics developed a powerful mental exercise known as the view from above, a technique designed to pull us out of the narrow confines of our immediate worries and place our lives within the vast, awe-inspiring context of the cosmos. It's a form of cognitive zooming out, where you deliberately imagine yourself rising high above your current situation, seeing your town from above, then your country, then the entire planet as a pale blue dot hanging in the immense blackness of space. This practice isn't about escapism, it's about perspective. It reminds us that our crises, no matter how all-consuming they feel in the moment, are incredibly small, temporary events in the grand scheme of things. The intensity of our anxiety often comes from a sense of isolation and permanence, as if this problem is the only thing that exists and will last forever. The view from above shatters that illusion, revealing the true scale and fleeting nature of our concerns. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this practice, constantly using it to maintain his composure amid the immense pressures of leading an empire. In his Meditations, he repeatedly returns to this theme, urging himself to constantly contemplate the bigger picture. He writes, "You should always look at human life as short and cheap. Yesterday a drop of semen, tomorrow a handful of ash or a mummy. So pass through this tiny span of time in accordance with nature and come to your journey's end with a gentle mind, like an olive that ripens and falls, praising the earth that bore it and grateful to the tree that gave it growth." He wasn't being morbid, he was being realistic. By holding the image of the entire universe in his mind, his own struggles for power, his fears of failure, and the petty grievances of court life simply lost their weight. They were reduced to what they truly were, brief, insignificant ripples on the surface of an infinite ocean. Consider how this could apply to a modern stressor that keeps so many of us up at night: financial worry. You might be lying awake, anxiously running through numbers, terrified about a debt, a potential job loss, or an unexpected bill. The problem feels enormous, solid, and permanent. It dominates your entire field of vision. Now try applying the view from above. Imagine yourself floating up above your home, seeing the lights of your neighborhood. Zoom out further, seeing your entire city, then your country, then the whole earth, a fragile, beautiful sphere. From here, can you even see your bank account? Your mortgage, the stock market? Of course not. Those are human constructs, tiny stories we tell ourselves. This doesn't make the problem disappear, but it radically alters your relationship to it. It becomes a manageable, temporary challenge rather than a world-ending catastrophe. It's a problem to be solved with a clear head, not a monster to be feared in the dark. This same technique works wonders for interpersonal conflicts. That heated argument with a partner or colleague can feel like the most important event in the world, leaving you replaying every word with a knot in your stomach. But from a cosmic perspective, This disagreement is a brief moment between two collections of atoms on a small planet orbiting an average star in one of billions of galaxies. This isn't to say your feelings aren't valid. It's to give you the breathing room to process them without being consumed by them. When you zoom out, you often find that the need to be right diminishes, and the space for understanding and compassion grows. The view from above is the ultimate antidote to self-importance and catastrophic thinking. It grounds us in the reality of our small but precious place in the universe, allowing us to engage with our problems with a sense of proportion, grace, and calm. So I'd like you to reflect on this. When was the last time you consciously zoomed out from a difficult situation to see the bigger, truer picture? What might change if you made this perspective shift a regular practice? While we can gain incredible clarity by zooming out to see the cosmic scale of our lives, the Stoics also developed a powerful technique for navigating the very real and immediate challenges we face right here on the ground. This practice is known as Premeditatio Malorum, which translates to the Premeditation of Evils. At first glance, this might sound pessimistic or even morbid. Why would anyone want to sit around thinking about everything that could possibly go wrong? But this is a profound misunderstanding of the Stoic aim. Premeditatio Malorum is not about cultivating fear or expecting the worst. It is the ultimate exercise in psychological preparedness. It's about mentally rehearsing potential setbacks and difficulties in order to strip them of their power to shock, paralyze, or emotionally devastate us when and if they actually occur. The goal is to move from a state of reactive fragility to one of proactive resilience. The great Roman Stoic Seneca was a powerful advocate for this practice. He wrote extensively about the value of regularly contemplating life's uncertainties. In one of his letters, he advises his friend Lucilius to rehearse them in your mind: exile, torture, war, shipwreck. He wasn't suggesting Lucilius live in a state of dread about these extreme events. Instead, he was urging him to engage in a form of mental fire drill. By walking through these scenarios in the safe space of his own mind, Lucilius would realize a crucial truth, that he could, in fact, endure them. He would arrive at the understanding that even the worst-case scenario contains within it the possibility of virtuous action, and that his core self would remain intact. Seneca concludes, all things that seem terrible at first are more lenient when we get acquainted with them. This mental rehearsal builds a kind of emotional callus, making us tougher and less easily wounded by the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Let's bring this ancient practice into a modern context that nearly everyone can relate to: the dreaded job interview. You've researched the company, perfected your resume, and practiced your answers. The conventional approach is to visualize success, to picture yourself confidently answering every question, getting the offer, and celebrating. And while positive thinking has its place, the Stoic would argue it leaves you dangerously vulnerable. What happens if you don't get the job? That single outcome has the potential to send you into a tailspin of self-doubt, frustration, and dejection because you never once considered it a possibility. You've attached your entire sense of worth and hope to one specific external result, a thing utterly outside your control. Now, let's apply Premeditatio Malorum. A day or two before the interview, you set aside 10 minutes for a deliberate mental rehearsal. You close your eyes and vividly imagine the entire process, but this time you imagine the rejection. You picture opening your email a week later to find the polite, "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." You feel the initial sting of disappointment. But then you go further. You mentally play out what happens next. You take a deep breath. You remember that your value is not determined by this one company's decision. You think about the experience you gained just by going through the process. you consider that this closed door might be redirecting you toward an even better opportunity that you can't see yet. You plan to send a gracious thank you note to the interviewer, maintaining your professional network. By the end of this mental exercise, the rejection has been transformed. It is no longer a terrifying monster. It is a manageable, albeit disappointing, potential outcome. You have faced it down in your mind and developed a plan for how you would respond with grace and resilience. When you walk into that interview, you do so with a different energy, not the desperate energy of someone who needs this one outcome to be happy, but the calm, confident energy of someone who knows they can handle whatever result comes their way. You have controlled the narrative before it could control you. This practice extends far beyond job interviews. It applies to difficult conversations, financial planning, health concerns, and even our personal relationships. Mentally rehearsing the potential for conflict, loss, or failure doesn't attract those things. It inoculates us against the paralysis they can cause. It allows us to pre-process our emotions so that in the moment of crisis, we are not hijacked by surprise and panic. Instead, we can access a pre-established mental script of calm and reasoned action. This is the essence of building an unshakable inner citadel. So I want to ask you to turn this lens inward for a moment. What fears currently hold you back in your life? Is it the fear of a difficult conversation going badly? The fear of a business venture failing? The fear of rejection in a personal relationship? Now, how might consciously and courageously rehearsing that very scenario in your mind, not to dwell on it, but to disarm it, radically diminish its emotional power over you and free you to act with greater courage and peace? Now we arrive at what is perhaps the most defining and radical principle of Stoicism, the very core around which the entire invisible compass is oriented, the belief that virtue is the sole good. For the Stoic, true happiness, what they called eudaimonia, or human flourishing, cannot be found in external things like wealth, fame, power, or even physical health. These are considered preferred indifference. They have value and it's natural to prefer having them, but they are not inherently good because they are not entirely within our control and they do not guarantee a good life. The only thing that is truly, unquestionably good is the quality of our own character, our virtue. This is the unwavering North Star for a Stoic, providing a moral direction that remains constant even when every external landmark has vanished in a crisis. Your bank account can be emptied, your reputation can be slandered, your body can fall ill, but your integrity, your courage, your justice, and your wisdom, those are yours to keep forever if you choose to cultivate them. This focus shifts the entire goal of life from achieving specific outcomes to living in a specific way. The former slave and profound teacher Epictetus, who understood better than most how little control we have over our external circumstances, put it with his characteristic bluntness: what then is to be done? To make the best of what is in our power and take the rest as it naturally happens. And what is in our power, our choices, our judgments, our actions, in short, our virtue. He drives the point home elsewhere, stating, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This reaction is always a matter of virtue." When we anchor our sense of self-worth and purpose, not to the fleeting rewards of the outside world, but to the steadfast development of our inner character, we become truly unshakable. A crisis no longer has the power to derail us because our primary goal was never to avoid the crisis in the first place. Our goal was to navigate it with wisdom, courage, and justice. The storm might rage, but our compass needle, fixed on virtue, never wavers. Imagine a modern business leader facing immense pressure to cut corners to meet a quarterly earnings target. The external rewards for doing so are clear: a soaring stock price, a hefty bonus, praise from shareholders. The short-term gain is tangible and seductive. The leader who is guided by external outcomes might rationalize the unethical choice, telling themselves that everyone does it or that it's just business. But the leader guided by the Stoic compass, by virtue as the sole good, faces a different calculation entirely. The question is not, what will make me the most money or praise, but what action aligns with integrity and justice, choosing to be honest, to treat employees and customers fairly, and to accept the lower earnings with transparency becomes the only true good outcome regardless of the stock price. This isn't a naive disregard for business realities. It's a profound understanding that a tarnished character is a far greater loss than any dip in revenue. The virtuous leader might face short-term criticism, but they preserve the one thing that matters most: their ability to look themselves in the mirror and know they acted with honor. They emerge from the crisis not diminished but strengthened, their inner compass confirmed and calibrated. This principle applies to our smallest daily interactions just as much as it does to major corporate decisions. Think about a time you might have been tempted to gossip about a colleague to make yourself look better, or to withhold credit from someone to claim it for yourself. In those moments, the external outcome we're chasing is social validation or a sense of superiority. The Stoic asks us to pause and realign. Does this action cultivate the virtue of justice? Does it demonstrate kindness? Choosing instead to offer genuine praise or to refuse to engage in gossip might feel like a smaller, less significant victory in the moment, but it is, in fact, a monumental triumph for your character. Each of these choices is a step taken in the direction your inner compass is pointing. It's a deposit into the only bank account that truly matters, the account of your virtue, which can never be bankrupted by outside forces. So, as we sit with this powerful idea, I want to offer you a question for genuine reflection, one that gets to the heart of how we live our lives. Where are you currently prioritizing external results like approval, achievement, or acquisition over your core values? And how might consciously shifting your focus from what you get to who you become fundamentally change your sense of direction and purpose, especially when the winds of crisis begin to blow? Building on this foundation of inner virtue, we come to a practical skill that allows us to apply that virtue to our daily perceptions, the Stoic practice of objective judgment. This is the disciplined art of seeing events for what they truly are, stripping away the layers of emotional narrative, personal bias, and catastrophic storytelling that we instinctively add the moment something happens. The Stoics believed that most of our suffering isn't caused by the events themselves, but by the judgments we attach to them. We don't just hear critical feedback, we hear an attack on our competence and worth. We don't just experience a rainy day that cancels our plans, we experience a personal injustice orchestrated by the universe. Objective judgment is the tool that interrupts this automatic process, inserting a crucial pause between an impression and our assent to it, allowing us to see the raw, neutral facts before we decide what they mean. Marcus Aurelius dedicated significant space in his Meditations to drilling this concept into his own mind. He constantly reminded himself to break things down to their essence. One of his most powerful exhortations is to ask of any disturbing impression, what is this in its own nature? What is it made of? How long will it last? He wasn't asking for a poetic interpretation. He was demanding a clinical, almost scientific assessment. He practiced seeing things as they are, not as his fears or desires painted them to be. He writes, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it, and it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. This is the ultimate empowerment. It places the responsibility for our emotional state squarely on our own shoulders, not because we are to blame for what happens, but because we alone have the authority to choose how we label and respond to it. Let's take a universally relatable example: receiving criticism at work. Your manager calls you into their office and says, "The report you submitted had several factual errors, and the conclusion wasn't as strong as it could have been. I need you to revise it." Now, observe the two possible paths your mind can take. The first, the emotional reaction, immediately layers a story onto those facts. The internal monologue might sound like, "Oh no, I've completely failed. She must think I'm incompetent. This is going to ruin my chances for that promotion. I put so much work into that, and it wasn't good enough. I'm so embarrassed." Notice how this narrative is filled with assumptions about another person's thoughts, predictions about a catastrophic future, and a global assessment of your entire self-worth based on a single document. This interpretation creates an immense amount of anxiety, shame, and defensiveness. Now, contrast that with the path of objective judgment. You hear the same words, but you make a conscious effort to isolate the bare facts from the added judgment. The facts are, there were factual errors in the report, the conclusion could be stronger, a revision is requested. That's it. That is the entire neutral event. There is no inherent message in those facts about your overall competence, your future, or your value as a person. It is simply data, actionable, specific feedback about a single task. From this clear-headed place, your response can be entirely different. Instead of reacting from a place of hurt pride, you can respond with calm professionalism. "Thank you for pointing those errors out. I will correct the facts and work on strengthening the conclusion. Would you be able to clarify what you'd like to see in a stronger conclusion so I can make sure the revision hits the mark?" This approach not only solves the problem efficiently but also demonstrates maturity and a commitment to improvement. The event was the same, but the judgment applied to it created two entirely different realities. This practice is like learning to be a scientist of your own life, constantly differentiating between the observable data and your own hypothesis about what that data means. It's a muscle that requires regular exercise. We can start with small, daily irritations. The driver who cuts you off isn't a malicious agent out to get you. They are simply a person who made a poor driving maneuver. The long line at the coffee shop isn't a personal affront to your morning. It's a simple matter of more people wanting coffee than there are baristas to serve them at that exact moment. By continually practicing this neutral observation, we build a buffer of mental space that prevents us from being yanked around by every external event. We move from being reactive to being responsive. This clarity is what allows our inner virtue, our wisdom and courage to guide our actions rather than our raw, unfiltered emotions. It's the process of cleaning the lens of your perception so that your invisible compass can give you a true reading. With that in mind, consider this. What is a recent event that initially sparked a strong negative reaction in you? And how could breaking it down into its pure, objective facts change your understanding of what actually occurred? This profound ability to see things objectively, to separate fact from fearful fiction, is what then allows us to engage with the next critical discipline of Stoic practice, the discipline of desire. If our judgments are the lens through which we see the world, then our desires are the engine that drives us through it. The Stoics argued that much of our turmoil stems from desires that are misaligned. We relentlessly pursue things that are not within our power to secure, that are not truly good for us, or that are simply unnatural. The discipline of desire is the process of consciously examining and recalibrating what we want, training ourselves to yearn only for that which is virtuous, attainable, and in harmony with our nature. It's about shifting the entire goal of our striving from external acquisition to internal cultivation. Seneca, who moved in the highest circles of wealth and power in ancient Rome, saw this as the fundamental task of philosophy. He observed that a man is not poor because he has little, but because he desires much. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." True wealth, in the Stoic sense, is not an abundance of possessions but a poverty of desires for things that lie beyond our control. This discipline directly attacks the root of frustration and dissatisfaction. When we desire a specific outcome, a promotion, a certain level of wealth, the approval of a particular person, we are essentially handing over our emotional well-being to the whims of fate. We set ourselves up for anxiety as we chase it, and for disappointment if we fail to achieve it, or even if we do achieve it and find it unsatisfying. The Stoic alternative is to redirect that desire inward. Instead of desiring the promotion, desire to do excellent, virtuous work worthy of promotion. Instead of craving recognition, crave the personal growth and mastery that comes from diligent practice. The object of the desire shifts from an external reward, which may or may not come, to an internal state, which is always within your power to pursue. This doesn't mean you become passive or unambitious. It means your ambition is directed toward the only thing you can truly command, your own character and effort. The result is a deep and lasting contentment, because your success is no longer contingent on the world giving you what you want. Your success is measured by your own commitment to living well, a goal you can fulfill every single day, regardless of external circumstances. Consider the powerful contrast between two individuals working in a creative field. The first is dominated by a desire for external recognition. They crave viral success, glowing reviews, and industry awards. Every project is undertaken with this hunger as the primary fuel. When a project fails to gain traction, they are crushed. They interpret the silence as a personal failure. They might become bitter, envious of others' success, and eventually give up, their passion extinguished by the lack of external validation. Now, consider the second individual who practices the Stoic discipline of desire. Their primary desire is for the virtuous act of creation itself. They desire to be diligent, to learn their craft deeply, to express something true, and to serve their audience with integrity. The work is its own reward. If recognition comes, they welcome it as a preferred indifferent, but it is not the source of their satisfaction. If a project flops, they are not devastated. They can assess it objectively. Did I do my best? What did I learn? How can I improve? Their sense of worth and purpose remains intact because it was never tied to the outcome in the first place. The first artist is on an emotional roller coaster, entirely dependent on the fickle tastes of the world. The second artist operates from a place of stable, self-generated contentment, fueled by the joy of the process itself. One is chasing a phantom, the other is building a life. This practice requires honest and sometimes uncomfortable self-examination. We must be willing to look at the drivers behind our goals. Why do you want a bigger house? Is it for shelter and comfort, which are natural, or is it to project an image of success to your neighbors, which is a desire rooted in opinion and outside your control? Why do you want to lose weight? Is it for health and vitality, which is a virtuous desire aligned with your nature, or is it solely for the approval of others, which is a slippery and unreliable foundation for happiness? The discipline of desire asks us to untangle these motives and consciously choose to invest our emotional energy only in the desires that lead to genuine internal good. It's a process of liberation, freeing us from the endless hamster wheel of wanting more, and allowing us to find profound satisfaction in the enough that we already have and the good we can already do. So, as we sit with this idea of consciously shaping what we want, I invite you to turn this lens on your own life. What desires currently dominate your thoughts and fuel your actions? And when you look at them honestly, are they truly within your control to fulfill? Or have you, perhaps without realizing it, chained your happiness to an outcome that fate may never provide? But understanding our desires and perceiving the world objectively are only part of the equation. These internal shifts must find their ultimate expression in the external world through what the Stoics called the discipline of action. This is where the rubber meets the road, where our inner principles are tested and proven through our deeds. It's the conscious commitment to take purposeful, virtuous action regardless of the chaos swirling around us. While the dichotomy of control teaches us where to focus our energy, and the discipline of desire aligns our wants with what is good, the discipline of action is about the actual doing. It's about moving through the world with intention, ensuring that every step we take is guided by our core values of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. This practice is what transforms a philosophical idea into a lived reality, creating a powerful sense of agency and direction, even when external circumstances seem to be pulling us in every direction at once. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and understood powerlessness intimately, placed immense importance on this idea of right action. For him, our roles in life, parent, citizen, friend, professional, come with inherent duties, and our primary task is to fulfill these duties with integrity, not for reward or recognition, but simply because it is the right thing to do. He taught that we should carefully consider our actions, asking not, "What do I get out of this?" but, "What kind of person does this action make me?" He famously said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." This is the essence of the discipline of action. Our philosophy is not a set of ideas to be debated, but a manual for living, to be enacted moment by moment, especially when it is most difficult. It's easy to act virtuously when life is calm and the path is clear. The true test comes when we are under pressure, tired, afraid, or tempted to take an easier, less principled route. Imagine a crisis scenario like a sudden community-wide power outage during a severe storm. Panic can easily set in. The external chaos is real: darkness, disrupted communication, uncertainty. One person, guided only by reactive emotion, might succumb to fear, hoarding supplies, thinking only of their own safety, and perhaps even taking advantage of the disorder. Their actions are dictated by the external chaos, and while they might secure short-term comfort, they erode their own character and contribute to the breakdown of the community. Now contrast this with someone who practices the discipline of action. They feel the same initial jolt of fear. Stoicism doesn't demand we become unfeeling robots, but they quickly engage their reasoning faculty. They remember their role as a neighbor and a community member. Their guiding question becomes, what does a good and courageous person do in this situation? Their virtue, not their fear, dictates their next moves. They check on the elderly couple next door, sharing their flashlights and spare batteries. They organize a neighborhood watch to ensure safety. They fire up a camp stove and make soup to share, creating a small hub of light and warmth in the darkness. Their actions are not about being a hero. They are simply about doing their duty with the resources they have. In the midst of the same external chaos, this person experiences not helplessness, but a profound sense of agency. They are actively making their corner of the world better, guided by their inner compass. The storm hasn't changed, but their response to it has transformed the experience for themselves and those around them. This principle applies just as powerfully in our less dramatic, everyday lives. Consider the pressure of a competitive workplace where cutting corners is the norm. The discipline of action means choosing to complete your work with thorough honesty, even if it takes longer and no one else will notice. It means giving a colleague credit for their idea in a meeting, even when you could have claimed it for yourself. It's about returning the extra change a cashier accidentally gave you, because justice is a principle you live by, not just a word you admire. Each of these small, seemingly insignificant actions is a repetition of a choice to let your principles, not your pressures, guide you. With every virtuous action, no matter how small, you strengthen the neural pathways of integrity. You are quite literally building your character through your deeds, brick by brick, action by action. This creates an unshakable sense of direction because you are constantly moving toward the person you aspire to be, regardless of whether the external world is rewarding you for it in that moment. Your actions become their own reward, their own confirmation that you are on the right path. So, as you move through your own day, facing its various pressures and temptations, I encourage you to hold on to this question. How can you actively ensure that your next action, and the one after that, is a direct reflection of your deepest principles and not just a reaction to the chaos happening around you? Now we turn to perhaps the most subtle yet powerful of the Stoic disciplines, the one that acts as the crucial gatekeeper for our inner peace, the discipline of assent. If our impressions of the world are the constant stream of data flowing into our minds, then assent is the moment we give that data our stamp of approval, accepting it as true and allowing it to shape our emotional reality. The Stoics discovered that between an external event and our emotional reaction, there exists a tiny but all-important space, a pause. The discipline of assent is the practice of widening that pause, of critically examining every initial impression that enters our consciousness before we automatically agree with it and let it steer our behavior. This is the mental equivalent of not letting every uninvited guest through your front door. You first check through the peephole to see who it is and whether they mean you harm. It is our primary defense against being hijacked by rash judgments and unnecessary emotional turmoil. Epictetus, whose teachings were meticulously recorded by his student Aurelius, placed this discipline at the very center of achieving a tranquil life. He offered a beautifully clear three-step formula for navigating any challenging impression. First, you must say to every harsh impression, "You are just an impression and not at all the thing you pretend to be." Then you must examine it and test it by the rules you possess, primarily asking whether this impression is about something within your control or not. His most famous instruction on this was, "Don't be disturbed by the vividness of the impression, but say, 'Impression, wait for me a little. Let me see what you are and what you represent.'" This momentary hesitation, this refusal to be swept away by the initial emotional wave, is the superpower of the Stoic. It is the practice of not believing everything you think the moment you think it. By withholding our immediate assent, we reclaim the authority to decide what something truly means, rather than having that meaning dictated to us by our raw, unfiltered neural circuitry. Consider a modern scenario that plays out in countless homes every day. You're having a pleasant evening when your phone buzzes with a new email. You see the subject line, "We need to talk tomorrow. Please come to my office at 9 a.m. It's from your boss. Instantly, a vivid impression floods your system. Your heart rate jumps. Your mind, without any conscious permission from you, immediately paints a worst-case scenario. I'm in trouble. What did I do wrong? The project must have failed. She's going to let me go. This is a disaster. This entire catastrophic narrative unfolds in a matter of seconds, and if you give your assent to this initial impression, your entire evening is ruined. You're consumed by anxiety, you can't sleep, you're short with your family, all based on a story you authored and then believed without a single shred of confirming evidence. Now let's replay that same scenario with the discipline of assent applied. The phone buzzes, you see the same email, you feel the same initial jolt of alarm. That physiological reaction is often automatic and not within your direct control. But here is where you insert the pause. You consciously say to that panicked impression, "Wait, let me see what you are." You examine the email. The raw, objective data is your boss has requested a meeting. That is all. There is no inherent data in that sentence about your performance, your job security, or disaster. It is a neutral fact. You then test it against your rules. Is this meeting within my control? No, the request is made. Is my boss's opinion within my control? Ultimately, no. What is within my control? My preparation and my response. Withheld from giving assent to the catastrophe, your mind can now generate other, equally plausible interpretations. Perhaps she wants to discuss a promotion. Maybe she needs your input on a new initiative. It could simply be a routine check in that she failed to contextualize properly. By pausing for assent, you have prevented a tidal wave of self-inflicted anxiety. You can now choose to send a calm, professional reply, "Sure, see you then. Is there anything you'd like me to prepare?" And then go on to enjoy your evening, dealing with the meeting itself when it actually happens, armed with facts rather than fears. This practice transforms us from passive recipients of our emotional weather into active architects of our mental climate. It applies to every domain of life, from hearing a piece of gossip about a friend and pausing before believing it and spreading it further, to receiving a terse text message from a partner and pausing before firing off a reactive, hurtful reply. Each time we exercise this discipline, we strengthen our capacity for reasoned choice over impulsive reaction. We build a life that is based more on what is actually true and less on what we fear might be true. It is the ultimate application of using our reason, our highest faculty, to govern our lower, more reactive instincts. So I'll leave you with this question to sit with, one that can reveal so much about our automatic patterns. Can you recall a recent time when you reacted impulsively to a situation, and how might consciously inserting that crucial pause to examine the impression have completely altered your response and the outcome that followed? This powerful practice of examining our impressions before we accept them as truth naturally leads us to a Stoic concept that has the potential to completely redefine our relationship with life itself. Memento Mori, the remembrance of death. At first, this might sound dark or morbid, a fixation on the one thing we are often taught to avoid thinking about. But for the Stoics, this was never about morbidity. It was the ultimate tool for creating clarity, urgency, and profound gratitude. Memento Mori is the practice of regularly contemplating our own mortality, not to instill fear, but to illuminate life. It is the gentle but constant whisper in our ear that our time is limited and precious, a reminder that pulls us out of petty squabbles, trivial worries, and the dangerous illusion that we have an endless supply of tomorrows. It is the sharpening stone against which we can hone our priorities, cutting away everything that is not essential, everything that does not truly matter. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire amidst constant war and personal illness, returned to this theme again and again in his private writings. He used it as a tool to ground himself in the present and to act with virtue right now, not at some vague point in the future. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't being dramatic, he was being practical. He understood that embracing the reality of our finitude is the very thing that fuels purposeful living. When we live with the conscious awareness that today could be our last, or that a loved one's last day could be today, it transforms our interactions. The argument you were holding onto suddenly seems insignificant. The gratitude you were meaning to express becomes an urgent need to voice. The passion project you've been putting off for someday demands to be started today. Death is not life's opposite. It is life's great teacher, giving every moment its weight, its value, and its beauty. Think about how this practice could reshape an ordinary Tuesday. You're stuck in a long, slow-moving line at the grocery store. Your initial reaction is impatience and frustration. You tap your foot, sigh loudly, and mentally complain about the inefficiency. Now apply Memento Mori. You pause and remember that this moment, this very experience of waiting, is a part of your life, a life that is finite. You are alive to feel this impatience. The person bagging your groceries is alive with their own struggles and joys. The loved ones you are shopping for are alive. This simple shift in perspective, sparked by the remembrance of death, can completely dissolve the frustration. It doesn't make the line move faster, but it transforms your experience of it from one of lack, a lack of time, a lack of speed, to one of presence. You might choose to use the time to observe the world around you with curiosity, or to offer a genuine word of thanks to the cashier. The reminder of death didn't create dread. It created depth, pulling a mundane moment into sharp, meaningful focus. This clarity extends to our most important relationships. How many of us have left a kind word unsaid to a parent, a partner, or a friend because we assumed there would be a better time tomorrow? How many minor disagreements have festered into major rifts because we prioritized being right over being connected, believing we would always have time to apologize? Memento Mori annihilates that assumption. It tells us that the perfect time is now, because now is all we are ever guaranteed. It asks us, if you knew that tonight was the last time you would ever speak to this person, what would you say? Would you reiterate your petty grievance, or would you tell them you love them? This practice infuses our daily decisions with a moral and emotional urgency that is both sobering and incredibly freeing. It reduces the noise of life and amplifies the signal of what is truly important: love, connection, and the courageous pursuit of what matters to us. So I pose this question to you, not as a theoretical exercise, but as a prompt for immediate reflection. If you were to truly internalize the fact that your time here is limited, what are the things you would immediately stop wasting your energy on? And what is the one thing you would finally, courageously start? This profound sense of our own impermanence, this awareness that our time is a fleeting gift, naturally opens our eyes to a fundamental truth about our place in the cosmos. We are not isolated points of consciousness, but threads in a vast, interconnected web. The Stoics called this concept sympatheia, a profound understanding that all things and all people are bound together in a single, rational, living whole. This isn't a vague, sentimental notion of everyone holding hands. It's a cosmological principle, a deep-seated belief that the universe is a single, interconnected organism, and that we, as rational beings, are its conscious parts. Recognizing this interconnectedness is a powerful antidote to the modern epidemic of loneliness and alienation. It shatters the illusion of separation, replacing it with a sense of belonging to something infinitely larger than ourselves. When we feel connected, our personal crises don't vanish, but they are contextualized. Our struggles are no longer ours alone to bear. They are part of the human condition, shared in different forms by every other thread in the tapestry. Marcus Aurelius, from his position of ultimate solitary power, constantly reminded himself of this truth to guard against the arrogance and isolation that could easily accompany his station. He wrote in his Meditations, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." For him, an action that harmed the community ultimately harmed himself because he was an inseparable part of that community. He saw his role not as a separate ruler lording over subjects, but as a vital organ within the larger body of the empire, whose health was dependent on the health of the whole. He urged himself to remember that we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To act against another person, in this view, is as unnatural as a hand suddenly deciding to strike the face. This philosophical foundation transforms our entire orientation toward others. People are no longer obstacles to our goals or competitors for resources. They are our fellow citizens in the vast city of the universe, collaborators in the grand project of existence. We can see a powerful, modern expression of sympathy in the way communities so often rally in the face of a natural disaster. When a hurricane floods a town or a wildfire forces evacuations, something remarkable happens. The artificial barriers of politics, social status, and personal grievance instantly dissolve. The shared crisis reminds everyone of their fundamental interconnectedness. People with boats risk their own safety to rescue strangers trapped in their homes. Community centers become hubs where volunteers distribute food and clothing, not asking for identification or proof of worthiness. Neighbors who may not have spoken for years check on one another and share generators. In these moments, the Stoic ideal is lived out instinctively. Individuals recognize that their own well-being is inextricably tied to the well-being of those around them. The disaster itself is an external evil, a preferred indifferent that has gone against human preference, but the human response to it, the outpouring of mutual aid, is a beautiful expression of virtue, of understanding that we are all in this together. This principle applies just as critically to our smaller, daily challenges. Think about a conflict at work. You might be locked in a disagreement with a colleague over a project's direction. The default, isolated mindset sees this person as an opponent, a barrier to your success. Your goal becomes winning the argument, proving yourself right. But a mindset informed by sympathy asks a different set of questions. It encourages you to see your colleague not as an obstacle, but as another part of the same whole, the company, the team, the shared goal of doing good work. From this vantage point, you can ask, what is this person's perspective? What knowledge or concern might they have that I am missing? How can we align our efforts for the benefit of the project, which is our shared hive? This shift doesn't guarantee agreement, but it transforms the interaction from a battle into a collaborative problem-solving session. It replaces friction with curiosity and defensiveness with a genuine desire to understand. You navigate the challenge not as a solitary warrior, but as a member of a team, reducing your own feelings of frustration and isolation while simultaneously creating a more productive and harmonious outcome for everyone involved. When you truly internalize that you are connected to all of humanity, every interaction becomes an opportunity to strengthen that connection rather than sever it. This practice of recognizing our deep connection to others, of seeing ourselves as part of a greater whole, naturally cultivates a profound sense of appreciation for the very fact of our existence and the countless gifts it contains. This brings us to a simple yet transformative Stoic practice that serves as a powerful anchor in any storm, the conscious cultivation of gratitude. For the Stoics, gratitude was far more than a polite thank you or a fleeting feeling. It was a disciplined way of seeing the world, a philosophical stance that actively counteracts our innate tendency to focus on what we lack. In a culture that constantly whispers we need more money, more status, more possessions to be happy, Stoic gratitude is a rebellious act. It is the deliberate decision to shift our attention from what is absent to what is abundantly present, to find wealth not in our acquisitions but in our appreciation. This mental habit doesn't ignore life's difficulties, but it firmly roots us in the bedrock of what we already have. providing a stable foundation of contentment that external turmoil cannot easily shake. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a man who experienced immense wealth, power, and devastating exile, wrote extensively about the vital importance of this practice. He saw ingratitude as a primary source of human misery, a sickness of the soul that keeps us perpetually chasing the next thing while remaining blind to the riches already in our hands. In one of his letters, he advises, "Let us cherish and love old age, for it is full of pleasure if one knows how to use it. Fruits are most welcome when almost over. Youth is most charming at its close. The last drink delights the toper, the glass which souses him and puts the finishing touch on his drunkenness." Here, Seneca isn't just talking about old age. He is illustrating the principle of savoring every stage of life for its unique gifts, rather than lamenting what is past or anxiously grasping for what is next. He urges us to appreciate the present moment, however ordinary it may seem, because it is the only moment we truly possess. He believed that a wise man is content with what he has, wishing for nothing more and wishing for nothing better. This isn't a call for complacency, but for a deep-seated recognition that the raw materials for a good life are already available to us, if we would only open our eyes to them. We can bring this ancient practice into our modern lives with incredible effect. Consider the simple act of eating a meal. It's easy to do this on autopilot, perhaps while scrolling through your phone or watching television, barely tasting the food. You might even complain if it's not exactly to your liking. Now, apply a Stoic lens of gratitude. Pause for just a moment before you eat. Consider the journey this food took to reach your plate, the sun and rain that nourished the plants, the farmer who harvested them, the truck driver who transported them, the grocer who stocked them, the hands that prepared them. Reflect on the miracle that your body can convert this food into the energy that allows you to think, to move, to live. This simple shift in perspective, from consumption to contemplation, transforms a mundane act into a sacred one. The meal is no longer just fuel. It is a testament to a vast, interconnected network of nature and human effort, a daily gift that you have done nothing to deserve but have been granted nonetheless. This practice can be extended to anything: the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the comfort of a roof over your head, the reliable function of your lungs drawing breath. These are not small things. They are the fundamental elements of existence that we have been conditioned to overlook in our pursuit of the extraordinary. This disciplined focus on gratitude serves two crucial Stoic purposes. First, it maintains perspective. When we are fixated on a single problem, a financial worry, a professional setback, it can swell to dominate our entire field of vision, blotting out everything else. The regular practice of gratitude is like stepping back from a single blotch of ink on a vast canvas to see the entire beautiful painting. It reminds us that even if one area of our life is difficult, countless other areas are still sources of strength and joy. Second, and perhaps more importantly, gratitude actively reduces the desire for more. It is impossible to genuinely feel grateful for what you have while simultaneously yearning for what you lack. The two states are neurologically and philosophically incompatible. By filling our minds with appreciation, we crowd out the space available for envy and dissatisfaction. We realize that we are already rich in the only currency that truly matters, the capacity to experience and appreciate the gift of life itself. So, as we sit with this idea of actively cultivating a grateful heart, I want to offer you a challenge directly from the Stoic playbook. It's a simple question, but one that can dramatically reorient your entire day if you answer it honestly. What are three simple, everyday things that you consistently overlook but are genuinely and deeply grateful for? This profound sense of gratitude for the fundamental gifts of life serves as the very bedrock for what the Stoics considered the ultimate state of being. the art of contentment. While modern culture often equates contentment with complacency or a lack of ambition, the Stoic view is far more radical and empowering. For them, contentment is not about settling for less or suppressing desire. It is about discovering a deep and unshakable source of satisfaction within yourself, a wellspring of peace that remains entirely independent of the fluctuating conditions of the outside world. This is the polar opposite of feeling lost. When your sense of worth and well-being is generated internally, you carry your home with you. No external storm, be it financial loss, social rejection, or professional failure, can dislodge you from your center, because your center is not out there somewhere waiting to be found. It is right here within you, cultivated and protected by your own reasoned choices. The former slave and profound teacher Epictetus, who knew a thing or two about having every external comfort stripped away, put it in the clearest possible terms. He said, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. Only after you have faced up to this fundamental rule and learned to distinguish between what you can and cannot control will inner tranquility and outer effectiveness become possible." But he went even further, directly linking this to our source of satisfaction. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. This rejoicing is not passive. It is an active, disciplined practice of deriving your primary joy from the one thing you truly own, your character and your voluntary actions. Your happiness becomes a choice, not a consequence. Consider the powerful example of someone facing a sudden and significant financial loss. The conventional reaction is often one of sheer panic, identity crisis, and despair. Their sense of security, their vision of the future, and perhaps even their self-worth were all tied to that external number in a bank account. Its disappearance feels like the ground has vanished beneath their feet, leaving them feeling utterly lost and adrift. Now imagine an alternative response guided by the Stoic art of contentment. The loss is still real and the practical challenges are acknowledged. There is no denial of the difficulty. However, the individual's core sense of self remains intact because it was never built on that financial foundation to begin with. Their contentment was sourced from their integrity, their relationships nurtured with virtue, their ability to learn, to adapt, and to find joy in simple, non-monetary pleasures. They might think, "This is a serious practical problem that I must solve, but it does not define me. I have lost money, but I have not lost my ability to be courageous, to be resourceful, to be grateful for my health and my mind. I can still act with justice and wisdom, and that is where my true value lies." This internal anchor prevents the free fall into despair. It allows them to navigate the crisis with a clear head and a resilient spirit, seeing it as a challenge to be met with virtue rather than a catastrophe that annihilates their happiness. This shift from external to internal validation is perhaps the most crucial personal journey we can undertake. We are culturally conditioned to seek signs of our worth from the outside. Likes on a post, promotions at work, the approval of peers, the acquisition of status symbols. Each of these is a shaky reed to lean on, as they are all granted or taken away by forces beyond our command. The Stoic art of contentment involves consciously weaning ourselves off this external validation and building a robust internal validation system. It's about learning to approve of yourself because you acted with courage when you were afraid, because you chose kindness when it was difficult, because you told the truth when a lie was easier. It's about finding satisfaction in the effort itself, the well-crafted sentence, the honest day's work, the patient conversation, rather than hanging your emotional state on the outcome it might produce. When you do this, you are no longer a puppet whose strings are pulled by the opinions and events of the world. You become the puppeteer, the source of your own applause. Your internal compass no longer spins wildly, looking for a signal. It points steadily toward your own unwavering North Star of virtue. So, as we sit with this transformative idea, I want to leave you with a question that can serve as a powerful mirror for your own life. Where are you currently looking for your sense of worth and satisfaction? Is it in the inbox waiting for praise, in the comparison to others' curated lives, or in the next purchase you believe will make you happy? And what would it feel like to slowly, deliberately turn that gaze inward, to find that validation in the quiet knowledge of your own good character and your best efforts, regardless of the outcome? And yet, even with this profound understanding of our connection to the cosmos and to each other, we still face the practical challenge of where to place our attention amidst the daily whirlwind of life. This brings us to a Stoic practice that is as simple in concept as it is difficult in execution, yet yields immense power: the practice of mindful presence. At its core, this is the disciplined effort to anchor our awareness firmly in the current moment, dealing only with what is immediately before us. The Stoics understood that anxiety is almost never about the present itself. It is a phantom that lives in the regretted past or the feared future. We suffer from memories of what has already happened and from imaginations of what might never happen, while the present moment, the only reality we ever actually experience, slips by unnoticed and unappreciated. By training ourselves to return again and again to the here and now, we pull the plug on the energy that fuels so much of our unnecessary stress and feeling of being lost. The great teacher Epictetus, whose words have guided us throughout this journey, framed this idea with his characteristic clarity and practicality. He advised his students to focus solely on the task immediately at hand, writing, "Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand." His instruction was to deal only with what is before you. This isn't about ignoring the past or failing to plan for the future. It's about recognizing that the past is a set of unchangeable facts and the future is a set of unpredictable possibilities. The only domain where we have any real agency, the only place where we can actually take a breath, make a choice, or perform an action, is in the eternal now. When we are fully present, we are operating from our point of maximum power and minimum distraction. Imagine a high-pressure work scenario. A critical system goes down just an hour before a major deadline. Panic is a natural first reaction. The mind instantly leaps to the terrifying future consequences: the angry client, the lost revenue, the damage to your professional reputation. This mental time travel into a catastrophic future is what creates the overwhelming sense of stress and paralysis. The Stoic practice of mindful presence would involve a conscious and deliberate grounding. You would take a single, deep breath and bring your focus to the absolute present. What is actually before you right now? It is a malfunctioning system. That is the entire problem. You are not, in this moment, dealing with an angry client or a lost contract. Those are future phantoms. Your entire world for the next minute is the system. You break it down into the smallest possible step. Restart the server. If that fails, move to the next step. Check the error logs. Then the next, contact the lead developer. By handling only what is directly in front of you, step by step, you bypass the anxiety loop. You are no longer fighting 100 imaginary battles. You are solving one real, manageable problem. This focused presence is not passive. It is intensely active and effective. It channels all of your energy, your reason, and your skill into the only arena where it can possibly make a difference: the present moment. This practice extends far beyond crisis management into the very fabric of our daily existence. How often are we physically in one place but mentally in another? We eat a meal while worrying about a meeting tomorrow, barely tasting the food. We play with our children while mentally rehearsing a difficult conversation, missing their laughter. We take a walk in nature while scrolling through news that angers or depresses us, oblivious to the beauty around us. In each of these moments, we are absent from our own lives. We are sacrificing the only reality we have, the rich sensory experience of the present, for a mental abstraction of the past or future. The Stoic art of mindful presence is the gentle but firm effort to reclaim those moments. It is the decision to put the phone down and really listen to your partner. It is the choice to feel the sun on your skin during a walk instead of ruminating on an old argument. It is the practice of taking a single minute to just breathe and notice your surroundings when feeling overwhelmed, rather than spiraling into worry. Each time we do this, we are recalibrating our inner compass to point toward reality, not fantasy. We are building a life that is actually lived, not just mentally rehearsed or regretfully remembered. So, as you consider the flow of your own thoughts throughout the day, I invite you to ask yourself with genuine curiosity, how much of the weight you carry, how much of the stress you feel, is actually generated by your residence in a time that is not now. This perspective of finding our strength in the present moment leads us directly to one of the most empowering Stoic beliefs, that adversity is not something to be avoided, but the very training ground where our character is forged. The Stoics didn't just preach resilience, they actively welcomed hardship as the necessary fire that tempers the steel of the human spirit. They operated from a fundamental reframing of reality, seeing every crisis, every setback, and every moment of pain not as a punishment or a deviation from a good life, but as an integral part of it, the part that holds the most potential for growth. A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, and a life without challenges never produces a resilient, virtuous, and truly self-aware individual. This mindset transforms the entire landscape of suffering. A difficulty is no longer a roadblock on your path. It becomes the path itself, the very thing that is sculpting you into a stronger, wiser, and more capable version of yourself. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who faced exile, chronic illness, and ultimately a death sentence from his former student, the Emperor Nero, wrote brilliantly about this transformative power of hardship. In one of his most famous letters, he uses the powerful metaphor of fire to illustrate this point. He writes, "Fire is the test of gold, adversity of strong men." Just as a goldsmith uses intense heat to burn away impurities and reveal the pure, precious metal beneath, so too does adversity burn away our own weaknesses, our vanity, our dependencies on external comforts, and our fragile egos. What remains after this trial by fire is our essential character purified, stronger, and of far greater value. Seneca continues, explaining that we should take a wider view and see that these challenges are not misfortunes but actually opportunities sent by the gods to give us a chance to prove our mettle. He urges us to greet hardship with a kind of gratitude, recognizing it as a tough but necessary teacher that we would be foolish to refuse. We can see this philosophy lived out with almost superhuman consistency in the life of the Roman statesman Cato the Younger. Cato was a staunch defender of the Roman Republic and a principled opponent of Julius Caesar's rise to dictatorial power. He knew his stand would likely cost him everything, and it did. He faced political defeat, was forced into exile, and saw the republic he loved crumble. Yet, throughout it all, he never wavered in his principles. His resilience wasn't the kind that simply endures suffering. It was the kind that actively uses suffering as a tool for self-mastery. He was known for his extreme self-discipline, often choosing to walk through the streets of Rome barefoot in all weathers and wearing only a simple cloak, not because he had to, but because he wanted to inure himself to discomfort. He was building what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but a state of being undisturbed by external passions, a calm readiness to face whatever fortune delivered. When he ultimately chose to take his own life rather than live under Caesar's rule, he did so not out of despair, but as a final, powerful act of moral freedom, demonstrating that his values were more important than his life itself. His story is a masterclass in treating an entire lifetime of political and personal adversity as one continuous training session in virtue. Bringing this ancient wisdom into our modern lives, we can start to see our own challenges through this empowering lens. That difficult project at work that feels overwhelming isn't just a source of stress. It's a chance to build your discipline, your problem-solving skills, and your patience. That painful disagreement in a personal relationship isn't just an emotional wound. It's an opportunity to practice empathy, to improve your communication, and to strengthen the bonds of understanding. Even a period of financial insecurity can be reframed. While undoubtedly stressful, it can become a training ground for creativity, frugality, and a deeper appreciation for the non-material sources of wealth in your life, like health and friendship. The event itself is neutral. The value is determined by what you choose to do with it. Do you let it break you, or do you allow it to forge you into someone more resilient? The next time you face a setback, however large or small, you can pause and ask yourself a simple but transformative question. What specific quality is this difficulty inviting me to develop? Is it patience, courage, humility, creativity? By asking this, you shift from being a passive victim of circumstance to an active participant in your own growth, using life's inevitable friction to polish your character rather than letting it wear you down. Now, this profound ability to remain fully present and to see adversity as a training ground brings us to a crucial skill that allows the Stoic to engage fully in life without being shattered by its unpredictability, the practice of detachment from outcomes. It is vital to understand that this Stoic detachment is not apathy, indifference, or a cold withdrawal from the world. Rather, it is an intelligent and purposeful reorientation of our focus from the end result, which is almost always outside our control, to the quality of our own effort and intention, which is always within our command. This is the difference between being an anxious gambler, desperately watching the spinning roulette wheel, and being a skilled craftsperson who finds their satisfaction in the meticulous work of their hands, knowing the final product will find its own place in the world. The Stoic invests their entire being into the process, into the action itself, while holding the potential result with an open hand. This is how they maintain their equanimity, their calm and balanced mind regardless of whether fortune delivers a triumph or a setback. Their peace is not contingent on a specific ending to the story. The great teacher Epictetus provided one of the most enduring and elegant analogies for this principle, comparing the Stoic to an archer. He explained that the archer's job is to do everything within their power to make a successful shot. They must carefully select their arrow, diligently practice their form, steady their breath, take aim with full concentration, and release the string with precision. These actions represent the realm of what is within their control, their skill, their effort, their focus. However, once the arrow has left the bow, it is subject to forces entirely beyond the archer's command. A sudden gust of wind may deflect it, the target might move unexpectedly, or the sunlight might glint off the target and obscure the view. The final outcome, whether the arrow hits the bullseye or lands in the dirt, is not within the archer's control. The foolish archer, Epictetus would say, ties their happiness and self-worth to the arrow striking the target. They celebrate wildly if it hits and fall into despair if it misses, making their emotional state a hostage to fortune. The wise Stoic archer, however, finds their fulfillment in the quality of the shot itself. If they have executed every step of the process with excellence and virtue, they have already succeeded, regardless of where the arrow lands. The external result is a preferred, indifferent nice-to-have, but not essential to their inner victory. We can translate this ancient analogy into a scenario that plays out in countless modern workplaces. Imagine you've spent weeks, perhaps months, preparing a crucial presentation for a major client. You've pored over the data, crafted a compelling narrative, designed beautiful slides, and rehearsed your delivery until it's seamless. The conventional, outcome-attached approach is to fixate on winning the client's approval and securing the deal. Your entire sense of accomplishment and professional worth becomes tethered to that single yes. As you present, you are not fully present in the act of sharing your knowledge. You are anxiously scanning the client's faces for signs of approval, your mind already racing ahead to the celebration or the dejection that will follow their decision. This attachment creates immense pressure, clouds your performance, and sets you up for a devastating crash if the answer is no, even if your presentation itself was technically flawless. Now let's apply the Stoic discipline of detachment. You have done the work, you have controlled the controllables, your preparation, your knowledge, your professionalism, your effort. You walk into the meeting room and you deliver your presentation with the same focus and excellence the Stoic archer puts into the shot. You are fully engaged in the act of communicating, of problem solving, of offering your best work. But you have already internally decoupled your self-assessment from the client's final decision. You have succeeded by showing up with virtue, with diligence, courage, and wisdom. If the client says yes, you welcome it calmly as a preferred outcome. If they say no, you are disappointed but not destroyed. You can objectively analyze the feedback without taking it as a personal indictment. Perhaps the client's budget was cut. Maybe a competitor had a pre-existing relationship. The reasons for the no are a complex web of factors mostly outside your control. By focusing on the excellence of your effort rather than the fickleness of the result, you protect your peace and maintain the resilience to move forward immediately to the next opportunity. Your confidence intact because it is rooted in your character, not your win-loss record. This mindset doesn't make you less effective. It makes you more formidable because you are free from the paralysis of fear and the intoxication of pride. So, as you consider the many targets you are aiming for in your own life, I invite you to ask yourself, where have you tied your happiness and self-worth to a specific outcome that is ultimately not yours to command? And what would it feel like to loosen that grip, to take pride in the beauty and integrity of the shot itself, and to allow the arrows to land where they may? This idea of an inner fortress, a sanctuary of calm built not from stone and mortar but from reason and virtue, is what the Stoics called the inner citadel. It is perhaps the most powerful metaphor in their entire philosophy for the state of being we've been exploring, that unshakable core of self that remains steadfast while the storms of life rage outside. Think of it this way: you can be in the middle of a hurricane with wind and rain lashing at you from all sides, but if you have a strong, well-built shelter, you can wait out the storm in safety and peace. The inner citadel is that psychological and spiritual shelter. It's not about hiding from the world or withdrawing into apathy. It's about cultivating such a strong center that you can engage with the chaos without being consumed by it. Your external circumstances might be turbulent, even painful, but your internal world, your judgments, your values, your peace of mind remains your own sovereign territory, impenetrable to outside forces unless you willingly open the gates. Marcus Aurelius, who faced more external chaos than most of us can imagine, constantly returned to this idea in his private writings. He saw this inner retreat not as an escape, but as a source of renewal and strength. He wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills, but this is altogether unphilosophical when you can at any moment retreat into yourself. Nowhere can a person find a retreat more full of peace or more free from trouble than his own soul. This is the ultimate Stoic freedom. You don't need to book a vacation or move to a cabin in the woods to find peace. Your retreat is always with you, accessible the moment you choose to turn your attention inward to your ruling faculty, your reason. It is the one place where you are truly the master, where you can evaluate impressions, choose your judgments, and align your actions with virtue, completely independent of the noise and drama unfolding around you. Building this citadel is a daily practice, not a one-time event. Its walls are constructed brick by brick through the consistent application of the very principles we've been discussing. Every time you practice the dichotomy of control and redirect your energy from an external you can't command to an internal response you can, you are adding a stone to the foundation. Every time you exercise objective judgment and see a setback for its neutral facts rather than the catastrophic story you might tell about it, you are reinforcing the battlements. When you choose a virtuous action in the face of pressure or practice gratitude for what you have, you are furnishing this inner space with everything you need to remain self-sufficient. The goal is to make this citadel so strong, so familiar, that retreating into it becomes your first instinct in a crisis, not your last resort. It becomes the command center from which you calmly assess the situation and decide on the wisest, most courageous course of action, rather than the panic room where you simply hide. So what does this look like in a modern, practical sense? Imagine you receive a devastating piece of professional news. You've been unexpectedly laid off. The initial shock is real, the external storm is ferocious. There are real financial and practical concerns to address, but the person who has been consciously building their inner citadel does not collapse. They feel the sting, the worry, the disappointment. Stoicism doesn't demand numbness, but then they retreat into that inner space of reason. They separate what is within their control from what is not. They cannot control the company's decision, but they can control their response. They can update their resume, reach out to their network, manage their household budget with care, and treat themselves with compassion. They can see the event objectively without layering on a narrative of personal failure. They can access their stored resilience and remember that their worth is not defined by their job title. From within their citadel, they can see the storm for what it is, a temporary external event, and they can plan their next moves with clarity and purpose rather than being swept away by the gale. The strength of your inner citadel determines your quality of life more than any external circumstance ever could. It is the difference between being a reed shaken by every wind and an oak tree with deep roots that bends but does not break. The storms will come, that is a guarantee of life, but you have a choice in how you meet them. You can stand exposed and vulnerable, letting the chaos dictate your emotional state, or you can retreat into the stronghold of your own character, a place built on virtue and reason, and weather any tempest with a steady heart and a clear mind. The peace you find there is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of a profound and unassailable inner strength. This profound sense of an inner fortress, a sanctuary built from virtue that we can retreat to no matter the external storm, is only possible when we first make peace with a fundamental truth of existence: nothing lasts. The Stoics called this the practice of accepting impermanence, and it is perhaps one of the most liberating yet challenging aspects of their philosophy. It is the conscious, daily acknowledgement that all things, every object, every situation, every relationship, and even our own lives, are in a constant state of flux. They arise, they exist for a time, and they inevitably pass away. This isn't a pessimistic view. For the Stoic, it is simply the realistic architecture of the universe. To fight against this truth is to swim against a powerful current, exhausting yourself in a battle you cannot win. But to accept it, to even embrace it, is to find a profound sense of freedom from the fear and clinging that so often cause our suffering. The Stoics drew this wisdom from earlier philosophers like Heraclitus, who famously said that no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. Heraclitus saw the universe not as a collection of static objects, but as a process, a continual flow of becoming and ceasing to be. The Stoics adopted this worldview wholeheartedly. Marcus Aurelius dedicated significant portions of his meditations to reminding himself of the transient nature of all things. He would list great emperors and entire civilizations that had risen, flourished, and vanished, reduced to stories in a history book or forgotten entirely. He wrote of himself, "Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died, and the same thing happened to both." This wasn't meant to be depressing, it was meant to be grounding. It was a tool to cut through the ego and the illusion of permanence that we so desperately cling to. By constantly contemplating the temporary nature of everything, we are forced to confront what truly matters. If everything we have and everyone we know is on loan from fate, how then shall we spend our time? The answer becomes clear. We must focus on the only thing of lasting value, the quality of our character and our actions in the present moment. We can see the painful struggle against impermanence play out in so many areas of modern life. Consider a long-term career. Someone might spend 20 years building an identity as a senior executive at a specific company. They derive their sense of worth, their social status, and their daily purpose from this role. Then, suddenly, a corporate merger or a shift in the market makes their position redundant. The external title is gone. The resistance to this impermanence, the refusal to accept that this chapter has ended, can lead to a devastating identity crisis, deep depression, and a sense of being utterly lost. The individual who has practiced the Stoic acceptance of impermanence would feel the same initial shock and grief. These are natural human emotions, but their philosophical foundation would prevent a total collapse. They would have always understood on some level that no job is forever. This understanding wouldn't have made them bad employees. It might have made them more present and grateful during their tenure. And when the end came, they would be better equipped to frame it. That was a wonderful and meaningful chapter of my life, and now it has reached its natural conclusion. My value was never in the title itself, but in the skills I built, the integrity I showed, and the people I helped along the way. Those things are still with me, and they will form the foundation for the next chapter. This acceptance doesn't remove the difficulty of transition, but it removes the additional, self-inflicted suffering of believing something permanent has been stolen from you. This same principle applies with even greater force to our personal relationships. The desire for love to be permanent, for our closest bonds to last forever, is one of our deepest human yearnings. And yet, Stoicism asks us to hold even these most precious connections with an open hand. People grow, they change, they move away, and sometimes relationships simply run their course. A parent must accept that their children will grow up and lead independent lives. A friend must accept that a decades-long closeness may slowly fade as circumstances change. To cling tightly to a relationship as it was, to demand that it never change or end, is to deny the reality of life's flow. It creates tension, resentment, and incredible pain. The Stoic approach is to love fully and deeply in the present, to be completely committed and virtuous within the relationship now, without attaching your future happiness to the guarantee of its permanence. You appreciate the person in front of you today, knowing that tomorrow is uncertain. This mindset doesn't make you cold or distant. It makes your love more authentic and less needy. It allows you to appreciate the beauty of a relationship for what it is, without the constant, low-grade anxiety of fearing its eventual end. You can truly savor the connection without being poisoned by the fear of losing it. This practice of releasing our tight grip on the transient things of the world is ultimately a practice in courage. It takes bravery to look directly at the fact that your health will not always be perfect, that your cherished possessions will eventually break or be lost, that your current comfortable circumstances will shift. But in that bravery lies an incredible reward, a lightness of being. When you stop trying to nail down the river, you can finally relax and enjoy the flow. You can engage with life more fully because you are no longer paralyzed by the fear of loss. You are free to take risks, to love deeply, to invest yourself completely in your work, precisely because you have made peace with the fact that all things have a season. Your inner citadel is strong because its walls are built on the solid rock of reality, not the shifting sand of wishful thinking. So, as we sit with this challenging but liberating idea, I want to offer you a question that can reveal where you might be resisting the natural flow of your own life. Look inward with honesty and compassion. What are you holding onto too tightly right now? A job title, a particular vision of the future, a past version of a relationship, a material possession simply because you are afraid of the change that its passing would bring. This unshakable inner fortress, built on the acceptance that all things change, allows us to access what might be the most superhuman seeming of all Stoic states, a profound and steady calm known as equanimity. In our world of constant stimulation and reaction, equanimity can be mistaken for apathy or a lack of passion, but nothing could be further from the Stoic ideal. True equanimity is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of a deep, balanced composure that remains unwavering amidst the highs and lows of life. It is the ability to experience pleasure without being seduced by it, and to face pain without being shattered by it. Think of it as the eye of a hurricane, a place of perfect stillness and clarity while chaos whirls all around you. For the Stoic, this isn't a mystical state reserved for monks. It is the practical result of rigorous mental training, the ultimate expression of an inner compass that always points true, regardless of the weather. The role of equanimity in Stoic practice is absolutely central to maintaining direction, especially during a crisis. When we are emotionally reactive, our decisions are dictated by the moment's passions, fear, greed, pride, or desperation. These emotions are like a magnet placed next to a compass, sending the needle spinning wildly and making it impossible to navigate. Equanimity is the protective case that shields that compass. It allows you to pause, access your reason, and choose a response aligned with your virtues and long-term goals, rather than being hijacked by a short-term impulse. It is the difference between a captain who panics and throws valuable cargo overboard in a storm and one who calmly assesses the situation, adjusts the sails, and steers the ship through the turbulence with a steady hand. Both captains face the same storm, but only one retains command of the vessel. The ancient teacher Epictetus, who focused intensely on the practical application of Stoic principles, gave us perhaps the clearest instruction on this matter. He taught his students to strive for a state where they are not swayed by pleasure or pain. He wasn't saying we shouldn't feel these sensations. He was insisting that we must not be governed by them. He used the powerful analogy of a banquet. Imagine, he said, that various dishes are being passed around. You can prefer to take a serving of the delicacies you enjoy, but you must do so without clinging or craving. And if the dish you dislike comes your way, you can refuse it without disgust or aversion. Your inner peace and self-command remain intact regardless of what is offered. Your happiness is not determined by the menu, but by your own disciplined choice. This is the essence of equanimity, maintaining your inner sovereignty whether fortune serves you a feast or scraps. We can bring this ancient idea to life with a modern scenario almost everyone in the working world will recognize. Imagine you've just presented a major project to your entire company. Later that day, you receive 2 emails. The first is from a senior executive praising your innovative approach and calling your work transformative. The second is from a colleague critiquing a specific detail, pointing out a potential flaw, and suggesting you overlooked a key piece of data. The untrained, reactive mind would be thrown wildly off balance by this mixed feedback. It might latch onto the praise, feeling a surge of pride and validation, and then be immediately deflated by the criticism, spiraling into self-doubt and defensiveness. Your entire emotional state becomes a ping-pong ball, batted back and forth by external opinions over which you have no control. Now, observe the same scenario through the lens of Stoic equanimity. You read both emails. You feel the initial pleasant sensation from the praise and the initial sting from the criticism. These are automatic physiological reactions. But then you engage your reasoning faculty. You apply objective judgment. You see both pieces of feedback for what they are, external data points. The praise is not a final verdict on your genius. It is one person's positive opinion. The criticism is not a condemnation of your worth. It is one person's constructive observation. From a place of calm balance, you can dispassionately assess both. You can appreciate the executive's encouragement without letting it inflate your ego. More importantly, you can analyze the colleague's critique without your ego getting in the way. Is their point valid? Is there a flaw you can correct? This feedback, though uncomfortable, could be a gift that makes the final project stronger. Your equanimity allows you to receive both the laurel and the thorn with the same steady hand, extracting the useful information from each while discarding the emotional baggage. Your sense of self remains grounded not in their opinions, but in your own knowledge that you prepared diligently and did your best with the information you had at the time. This cultivated calm fundamentally alters the quality of our decisions and our lives. When we are not jerked around by every compliment and insult, we gain a tremendous amount of energy and clarity that would otherwise be wasted on emotional turbulence. We become harder to manipulate because flattery won't cloud our judgment and threats won't trigger panic. We can engage in difficult conversations with a focus on finding truth rather than winning an argument or protecting our image. This is the superpower of the Stoic leader, the parent, the partner, and the friend. It is the ability to be fully present and effective, no matter what is happening. So, as you reflect on the constant stream of rewards and challenges that life presents, I want to leave you with a question that can reveal the transformative potential of this practice. How would the most important decisions you've made recently have been different if you had approached them with perfect equanimity, not with coldness, but with a calm, clear, and balanced mind, free from the distorting pull of momentary emotion? But to build that inner citadel and to maintain that state of equanimity, we need a master architect, a reliable foreman to oversee the construction and ensure everything is built to last. For the Stoics, that foreman, that ultimate authority, is reason. They saw human reason not as a cold, calculating machine, but as our highest faculty, our direct connection to the rational order of the universe itself. It is the compass needle within our invisible compass, the part of us that, when properly calibrated, can always be trusted to point toward truth, virtue, and our best course of action, especially when emotions threaten to send us spiraling off course. In the heat of a crisis, our feelings might scream one thing: panic, run away, blame someone, give in to despair, but our reason, if we have trained it to speak with a clear and confident voice, can cut through that noise with a quiet, steady whisper of truth. It is the faculty that allows us to question our initial, often flawed, impressions and choose a response that aligns with our deepest principles, not our most fleeting passions. Marcus Aurelius, in his private meditations, constantly returned to this idea of the ruling faculty, or hegemonikon. He saw it as the command center of the human soul, the part of us that receives impressions from the senses, but then has the power to assent to them or reject them. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But he went even further, specifying exactly where that power lies. The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. For him, the quality of our entire life is determined by the quality of our reasoning. It is reason that allows us to distinguish between what is truly good virtue and what is merely preferred or disliked externals. It is reason that enables us to practice the view from above to gain perspective, and it is reason that empowers us to withhold assent from a catastrophic first impression. Without this guiding light of logic, we are simply at the mercy of every passing feeling, every external event, like a ship without a rudder being tossed about in a storm. The Stoic goal is not to eliminate emotion, but to ensure that emotion is always evaluated and, if necessary, corrected by our rational mind before we allow it to dictate our actions. We can see the critical difference between an emotional reaction and a reasoned response play out in a scenario that many of us will face at some point, making a difficult financial decision under pressure. Imagine you get a call from a beloved family member. They are in a desperate situation, perhaps a medical emergency or facing eviction, and they need a significant sum of money right now. Your immediate emotional response is likely a powerful mix of compassion, fear for them, and a strong desire to fix the problem. That emotional impulse might scream, "Yes, send the money immediately, do whatever it takes." This is a good impulse in that it comes from a place of love, but acting on it without engaging your reasoning faculty could lead to devastating consequences for everyone involved. You might send money you need for your own rent, putting your family's stability at risk. You might enable a destructive pattern without realizing it. The emotional reaction is focused solely on the immediate alleviation of distress, with no thought for the long-term ramifications. Now, contrast this with a response guided by Stoic reason. You feel the same powerful surge of compassion and concern. Reason does not make you cold or unfeeling, but you insert that crucial pause. You engage your ruling faculty. You assess the situation logically. You ask questions. What is the full story here? Is this a one-time crisis or part of a recurring pattern? What are all the possible ways I could help that don't necessarily involve just giving money? Could I help them negotiate with creditors, research community aid programs, or provide a place to stay temporarily? What is the most virtuous and effective way to act that truly serves their long-term good, not just quiets my own emotional discomfort in the moment? By applying reason, you might still decide to provide financial help, but it will be a measured, thoughtful action, taken with clear boundaries and perhaps alongside other forms of support. Or you might realize that the most loving and courageous action is to offer support in a different way that doesn't jeopardize your own household. The decision is no longer a raw, reactive impulse. It is a considered choice made from a place of both love and wisdom. The compass needle of reason held steady, allowing you to navigate a turbulent emotional situation with clarity and integrity, ensuring your actions are truly helpful rather than merely impulsive. Now, let's consider a tool the Stoics used not just to survive hardship, but to actively invite it in small, manageable doses in order to build the very resilience we've been discussing. This is the practice of voluntary discomfort, and it might be one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful ideas we've encountered yet. In a world that relentlessly pursues ease, convenience, and the path of least resistance, the Stoics proposed a radical alternative, that we should periodically and deliberately choose to make our lives a little bit harder. Why on earth would anyone do that? The answer is profound in its simplicity: to inoculate ourselves against fear, to build a kind of psychological muscle memory for hardship, and to never, ever take our comforts for granted. It's the mental equivalent of a fire drill. You don't wait for the building to be engulfed in flames to figure out the exit. You practice when it's safe, so you're prepared when it's not. The Roman statesman and philosopher Seneca was a huge proponent of this idea. Despite being one of the wealthiest men in Rome, he would regularly engage in what he called voluntary poverty. He would set aside a certain number of days each month to live as if he had nothing. He would wear his oldest clothes, eat the plainest and cheapest food available, and sleep on a hard pallet instead of his comfortable bed. He wasn't doing this out of some masochistic desire to suffer. He was conducting a philosophical experiment on himself. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" His goal was to prove to himself, through direct experience, that he could endure the very circumstances he most dreaded. By willingly stepping into a state of lack, he was proving that his happiness and his sense of self were not dependent on his wealth. He was building his inner citadel by showing himself that even if fate stripped everything away, the core of who he was would remain resilient and unbroken. We can translate this ancient practice into a myriad of powerful modern applications. It doesn't have to be about poverty. Think about our deep, almost biological dependence on our digital devices. The constant stream of notifications, the endless scrolling, the immediate access to distraction, it has made us mentally soft, addicted to easy dopamine hits, and terrified of being alone with our own thoughts. A modern form of voluntary discomfort could be a deliberate digital detox, choosing to leave your phone at home for an entire day, or turning off all notifications for a weekend. Initially, it feels incredibly uncomfortable. You'll feel that phantom buzz in your pocket, that itch of curiosity about what you're missing. But by sitting with that discomfort, by not scratching the itch, you are performing a powerful act of mental training. You are proving to yourself that your peace does not require constant external input. You are rediscovering the ability to be bored, which is the very birthplace of creativity and deep reflection. Another potent example is the embrace of physical discomfort, like taking a cold shower. It's a small act, but it's a profound teacher. Every morning, standing before that shower knob, you are faced with a choice: the easy, comfortable, warm path, or the difficult, bracing, cold one. Choosing the cold, even for just 60 seconds, is a tiny victory for your willpower over your instinct. It's a daily rehearsal for courage. The shock of the cold water forces you into the present moment like nothing else. You cannot be worrying about your to-do list or a future problem when your entire nervous system is yelling about the cold. It teaches you that you can withstand a strong, unpleasant sensation and emerge on the other side not just fine, but actually more energized and alive. You are building a reservoir of resilience, one cold splash at a time, proving to yourself that you can handle much more than you think you can. The ultimate purpose of all these exercises is to prevent what the Stoics feared most, becoming soft. They believed that a life of uninterrupted comfort was dangerous because it created a fragile person. Someone who had lost the psychological calluses needed to handle life's inevitable roughness. By voluntarily stepping into discomfort, we are sanding down our sharp edges of entitlement and building up our tolerance for adversity. We are making friends with difficulty on our own terms, so that when it arrives on fate's terms, it feels familiar, not frightening. We are also performing a beautiful act of gratitude. By temporarily giving up a comfort, we rediscover its true value. That warm bed feels infinitely more luxurious after a night on a hard floor. That simple meal of bread and cheese tastes like a feast after a day of fasting. Voluntary discomfort recalibrates our appreciation for the ordinary blessings we so easily overlook. It's not about rejecting comfort, it's about ensuring that comfort is our grateful guest, not our demanding master. So I'll leave you with this challenge, one that can transform your relationship with ease and difficulty. What single comfort could you consciously and courageously choose to give up for a short time, not as a punishment, but as a training exercise to forge a stronger, more resilient, and more appreciative version of yourself? Now, let's shift our focus outward, from the inner resilience we build through voluntary discomfort to how we engage with the world around us, specifically, how we treat other people. This brings us to one of the four cardinal virtues that form the very bedrock of Stoic ethics: justice. For the Stoics, justice wasn't just about laws and courts. It was a much broader, more profound commitment to fairness, kindness, and recognizing the inherent worth of every other human being. They believed that we are all made from the same divine spark of reason, all citizens of the same vast universe, and therefore all deserving of basic respect and fair treatment. This commitment to justice provides an incredibly clear moral direction, especially in situations of conflict or confusion. When you are unsure of what to do, the Stoic compass points you toward a simple but powerful question: what is the most fair and kind action I can take here? Marcus Aurelius, despite wielding the absolute power of a Roman emperor, constantly reminded himself of this duty. In the private pages of his Meditations, he wrote, "I shall strive to act with justice toward those who are unjust." Think about the depth of that statement. He wasn't saying he would only be fair to those who were fair to him first. He was committing to a personal standard of justice that would remain unshaken, even when others acted with malice, deceit, or selfishness. His moral clarity came from within. It was not dependent on the behavior of anyone else. He understood that another person's vice was their own burden to carry, but his own virtue was his to protect. By choosing to act justly regardless of the provocation, he was not only making the world a slightly better place, he was safeguarding his own soul from being corrupted by anger, pettiness, or the desire for revenge. His sense of direction came from his own unwavering principles, not from the chaotic actions of others. Imagine a practical, modern scenario where this virtue is tested. You are asked to mediate a dispute between two colleagues at work. Both are friends of yours and both are passionately arguing their side, each convinced they are right. The easy, self-serving path might be to take sides based on who you like more, or who can benefit your career, or to simply avoid the conflict altogether. But the path of Stoic justice demands something far more difficult and far more meaningful: impartial fairness. Your role isn't to choose a winner, but to be a facilitator of understanding. You would actively listen to both sides without prejudice, seeking only the truth of the situation, not victory for a friend. You would ask questions designed to uncover the root of the misunderstanding rather than to prove a point. You might help them see the other's perspective, not to force a compromise, but to foster genuine empathy. In doing so, you are guided by a higher principle than personal loyalty or convenience. You are acting as a custodian of the greater good for your team, your company, and your own character. The resolution itself is an external outcome you can't fully control, but your commitment to a fair process is entirely within your power. This is how justice becomes a compass. It gives you a true north of moral integrity to follow when the social terrain gets messy and confusing. This practice extends far beyond formal mediation into our smallest daily interactions. It's about giving the cashier who made a mistake the same patience you'd want if you were having a bad day. It's about acknowledging the good idea from the coworker you find annoying. It's about refusing to participate in gossip that unfairly damages someone's reputation, even when it's the entertaining topic of the moment. Each of these choices is a small but powerful enactment of justice. They are the bricks with which we build a character that is consistent, reliable, and trustworthy. When you make fairness your default setting, you never have to wonder which version of yourself will show up in a difficult situation. You know you have already decided. This eliminates a tremendous amount of internal conflict and anxiety, replacing it with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your actions are aligned with a timeless virtue. So, as you move through your own web of relationships and responsibilities, I want to leave you with this guiding question. In your quest for direction and a life well lived, how does consciously striving for fairness in your everyday interactions provide you with a clearer path forward and a stronger sense of who you are? In a world that never seems to stop talking, that is constantly vying for our attention with notifications, news cycles, and endless demands, the Stoics carved out a sanctuary of immense power, the deliberate practice of silence and solitude. This isn't about loneliness or withdrawing from our responsibilities in life. It is about the profound and necessary act of strategic withdrawal into oneself to find the clarity that the noise of the world so effectively obscures. It is in these quiet moments, away from the opinions of others and the chatter of society, that we can finally hear the true, steady voice of our own inner compass, recalibrating it to point toward our authentic north. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a man deeply engaged in the hectic political life of ancient Rome, understood this necessity intimately. He wrote powerfully about the need to periodically retreat from the crowd, stating, "You must withdraw into yourself as far as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach." But that first part is crucial. You must withdraw into yourself. Seneca saw this not as antisocial behavior, but as the essential maintenance required for a soul that is constantly being acted upon by external forces. It is in solitude that we digest our experiences, sift through our impressions, and separate the wheat of wisdom from the chaff of mere reaction. Imagine a practical, modern application of this Stoic principle. You've just endured an incredibly stressful week at work, a major project launch that was riddled with last-minute problems, difficult conversations, and sleepless nights. The launch is finally over, and the conventional impulse is to immediately numb the stress, to go out for a loud dinner with colleagues to decompress, to lose yourself in a streaming marathon, to fill the sudden silence with more input. There's a place for that, but the Stoic would argue that the most restorative and insightful action you can take is to instead deliberately seek out silence. This means turning off all the screens, taking a long walk alone, or simply sitting in a quiet room with nothing but your own thoughts for company. In that self-imposed solitude, something remarkable happens. The frantic energy of the crisis begins to settle. Without the distraction of other voices or entertainment, your mind starts to process the events of the week, not as a chaotic blur, but as a series of discrete moments. You can replay the difficult conversation and see it from a calmer, more objective perspective. You can assess your own performance, where you acted with courage and where fear may have gotten the better of you. You can extract the lessons from the near misses and the successes. This isn't rumination, it is recalibration. You are allowing the sediment of a turbulent experience to settle to the bottom, leaving the water of your mind clear once again. You emerge from this silence not just rested, but realigned, with a clearer understanding of what that stressful event taught you about your own capabilities and your values. This practice of seeking quiet reflection is how we move from simply experiencing life to actually learning from it. It transforms our chaotic reactions into considered responses. When we constantly live in the noise, our inner compass is subject to 1,000 different magnetic pulls: the expectations of our boss, the opinions of our friends, the curated highlight reels of social media. It's no wonder we sometimes feel lost. Solitude is the quiet field where we can lay that compass down on a steady surface and watch until the needle stops spinning and points firmly to true north, which is always our own reasoned judgment and virtue. It is the space where we can finally hear ourselves think and, more importantly, hear ourselves feel. So I would ask you to reflect on this with genuine curiosity, not as a theoretical exercise but as an invitation to a more centered way of living. When was the last time you truly sought out a period of uninterrupted silence, not to escape a problem, but to actively listen for the answers that have been waiting patiently beneath the noise? And what surprising clarity might you have discovered about yourself or a situation you were facing if you had simply allowed for the quiet to speak? This idea of finding clarity in silence and grounding ourselves in our own reasoned judgment brings us to the very bedrock of Stoic philosophy, the principle from which all the others flow, the call to live in accordance with nature. At its heart, this is the ultimate act of alignment, a conscious decision to harmonize our actions with two interconnected realities: the nature of the world around us and our own essential human nature. For the Stoics, this wasn't a suggestion to simply go live in the woods. It was a profound and practical blueprint for a life of peace, purpose, and unwavering direction. To live against nature is to swim upstream, exhausting yourself in a futile struggle against the current of reality. But to live in accordance with nature is to finally turn and flow with the river, using its current to carry you forward with grace and power. It is the final, master calibration of your invisible compass, ensuring it is synced not with your fleeting whims or society's noisy demands, but with the fundamental truths of existence itself. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, established this principle as the very definition of a good life. After being shipwrecked and losing everything, he found himself in Athens and wandered into a bookstore where he was introduced to the philosophy of Socrates. This catastrophic event, which could have broken him, instead became the catalyst for his life's work. From this experience, he developed the core Stoic idea that happiness, or eudaimonia, human flourishing, is found by living a life of virtue in accordance with nature. For Zeno and the Stoics who followed him, nature had a dual meaning. First, it refers to the external, cosmic nature, the rational, interconnected, and ever-changing universe that operates by cause and effect. This is the world of seasons, of growth and decay, of unexpected storms and sudden calms. To live in accordance with this external nature means to accept its fundamental rules, that change is inevitable, that some things are within our control and others are not, and that resisting these facts is the primary source of our suffering. But the second, and perhaps more important, meaning of nature is our own human nature. The Stoics believed that what sets humans apart from other animals is our unique capacity for reason, our ability to think logically, to understand the world, to make conscious choices, and to act with virtue. Therefore, to live in accordance with our own nature is to fully embrace and exercise this faculty of reason in everything we do. It means making our choices based on wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, rather than being driven by blind instinct, raw emotion, or irrational desire. When we align our actions with this highest part of ourselves, we are living as we were designed to live. We are fulfilling our potential. The harmony that comes from this is not a passive state. It is an active and dynamic alignment of our inner world with the outer world, our choices with reality, and our actions with our deepest values. We can see the profound practicality of this principle in a scenario everyone has faced: the complete derailment of carefully laid plans. Imagine you've been looking forward to a long-awaited vacation for months. You've booked the flights, the hotel, and curated a perfect itinerary. Then, the day before you're set to leave, a massive storm system grounds all flights indefinitely. Your vacation, as you envisioned it, is impossible. The natural, untrained reaction is one of intense frustration, anger, and disappointment. You might spend hours on the phone arguing with airlines, refreshing weather apps in denial, or complaining bitterly about your terrible luck. This is a clear example of living against nature. You are raging against the external nature of weather, a force entirely beyond your control, and in doing so, you are also acting against your own rational nature by wasting your energy on a futile fight. Now let's apply the Stoic principle of living in accordance with nature. The first step is to accept external nature. The storm is here. Flight cancellations are a reality. This is the way of the world, impersonal and unchanging. Fighting it is as sensible as shaking your fist at the rain. The second step is to turn to your human nature, your capacity for reason. You pause and ask, given this new reality that I cannot change, what is the wise, the courageous, the resourceful thing to do now? Your reason gets to work. You calmly accept the airline's cancellation and focus on what you can control. You call the hotel to see if you can reschedule. You explore alternative destinations you could drive to. Or perhaps you realize this is an unexpected gift of time, a chance to finally tackle that home project, have a relaxing staycation, or connect with local friends you never have time for. By aligning your response with nature, both the external reality of the storm and your internal capacity for rational adaptation, you transform a frustrating setback into a different but potentially wonderful experience. You have stopped fighting the current and instead turned your boat to sail with the new wind. This alignment offers the deepest form of harmony because it resolves the internal conflict between our desires and reality. When we want something that the world simply cannot provide at that moment, we feel lost, confused, and anguished. But when we align our desires with what is true and possible, we find a profound sense of direction. Our compass is no longer telling us to go north while the wind blows east. Every part of our being is oriented in the same direction. This is how we find our flow. It's the feeling of doing work that utilizes your unique skills and brings you joy because it aligns with your nature. It's the peace that comes from ending a toxic relationship because it was contrary to your need for respect and kindness. It's the clarity that emerges when you stop chasing a society's definition of success and start pursuing goals that genuinely resonate with who you are at your core. Living in accordance with nature is the ultimate act of coming home to yourself, while simultaneously making peace with the beautiful, unpredictable, and magnificent world in which you live. And so we arrive at the end of our journey together, having explored the ancient yet timeless tools that form this invisible compass. We began with the fundamental dichotomy of control, learning to channel our energy solely into what we can command, our judgments and actions, and to release our grip on the uncontrollable. From there, we discovered the transformative power of amor fati, of loving our fate, and embracing every event, especially the difficult ones, as necessary for our growth. We practiced gaining cosmic perspective with the view from above, and we built psychological resilience by mentally rehearsing challenges through Premeditation of. We anchored ourselves in the radical idea that virtue is the sole good, the only true source of worth that can never be taken from us. We then honed our perception with objective judgment, learning to see events as they are, not as our fears paint them. We realigned our desires and our actions with the three disciplines, ensuring they served our character, not just our comfort. We found strength in Memento Mori, using the remembrance of our limited time to clarify our priorities and infuse our days with purpose. We recognized our profound interconnectedness with all of humanity through sympatheia, understanding that we are not alone in our struggles. We cultivated a deep and abiding gratitude for the present moment, and we discovered the art of true contentment, which is found not in having what we want, but in wanting what we have. We practiced mindful presence, resilience through adversity, and the liberating detachment from outcomes. We built an inner citadel of unshakable character, made peace with the impermanent nature of all things, and cultivated the balanced calm of equanimity. We learned to let reason be our guide, to voluntarily embrace discomfort to toughen our spirits, to act with justice and fairness, to seek clarity in silence, and ultimately, to live in accordance with our own rational nature and the nature of the world around us. Individually, each of these principles is a powerful tool, but together they form something far greater than the sum of their parts. They form a complete and reliable system for navigation, an invisible compass that always points toward your true north, which is your own reasoned virtue. This compass doesn't make the storms of life disappear. Instead, it gives you the means to sail through them without being capsized by fear, anger, or despair. It reorients you from seeking direction in the external, chaotic world to finding it within the calm, sovereign territory of your own mind. You realize that you were never truly lost. You simply needed to learn how to read the instrument you've always possessed. The great teacher Epictetus, who knew more than most about overcoming external limitation, left us with a parting gift that encapsulates this entire journey. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This is the ultimate promise of the Stoic compass: freedom, not freedom from circumstance, but freedom within it. The freedom that comes from self-mastery, from knowing that no matter what happens outside of you, you retain the power to choose your response. Your inner strength, your character, your peace, these are the possessions that no crisis can ever confiscate. This isn't philosophy to be left on the page or admired from a distance. It is a practice to be lived. I encourage you to take just one of these principles with you today. Perhaps it's the dichotomy of control when you're next stuck in traffic, or a moment of gratitude for your next meal. Practice it, embody it, and see how it changes your experience. The invisible compass becomes visible through your actions. If these ideas have helped you find a new sense of direction, consider subscribing to the channel for more insights from Stoicism and other wisdom traditions. And I would truly love to hear from you in the comments below. Which Stoic principle resonates most with you right now, and how do you think it might guide you through your current challenges? Thank you for joining me on this exploration. May your compass always guide